looking at Daas Tevunos. We're going to start a new subject today. I sent out additional handouts. And we're on page Nun Gimel, page 53 of the Rav Friedlander version of Daas Tevunos. If you're following paragraphs, we're in paragraph 66, Samach Vav. Trias HaMeisim, we're getting into now Trias HaMeisim. Remember, the Sefer begins as a dialogue. A person's neshama is talking to his seichel. And the neshama says to the seichel, I believe in the 13 animaments. 9 of the 13, I believe in because the Rebbeinu Shalom taught them to Moshe, and Moshe taught them to Yeshua, and Yeshua taught them to the Shoftim, and we have a Messiah. We have Messiah Dor Lador on things that a Jew needs to believe in. The Rambam set it up as 13. There are other shittas, the Sefer HaIkarim, whatever it is, there are principal articles of faith that a Jew believes in. So we're going to go now with 13. And the neshama says to the seichel, I believe in all 13. 9 of the 13, I actually understand on a rational basis. 4 of them, I don't understand on a rational basis, but I actually absolutely believe in as Tevunos Moshe. And the Ramchal holds, as does the Shalom, as does the Chayvus Halavavos, as does many Rishonim, as does the Rambam, the Mashmois of the Rambam, that these articles of faith are not just faith, they are to be understood as well. We say it 3 times a day when we say Aleinu Al-Kein Kavod, and we read it yesterday on Shabbos. V'yadata hayoy, v'hashevois elo avecha, ki Hashem hu Elokim b'shamayim imal v'aloretz mitachas, ein oid. And you shall know, and you shall let seep and absorb into your heart that there's only one God, no one other than God. So the pasuk begins with V'yadata, you shall know. No, K-N-O-W. Means that you have to put on your thinking cap, open your brain, and you have to know this. You must understand this. How do you understand something if you're not thinking about it? So therefore, these articles of faith, God's existence, to the extent we can even understand. We never talk about God's essence, but the idea that there's a God who pre-exists everything. There's a God who has no component parts. There's a God who runs the world, the animaments. This is your data. You need to know them. So the neshama says to the seichel, I understand 9 of them. 4 I absolutely believe in as articles of faith, but I don't understand how these 4 work. Neshama, the seichel said, neshama, what's so difficult about these 4? So the neshama said, I'll tell you what's difficult, because when I look outside my window, none of these 4 seem to be working. And the 4 are hashgacha, that God is supervising the world every microsecond, every millisecond. Schava oynish, God rewards and punishes as a person deserves either one. Bias Mashiach. And Trias HaMeisim. I don't understand these things. I believe in, I don't understand them. If I look out the window, Misibas Tapuchais, I see a topsy-turvy world. Unless I learn Daas Tevunos or similar Sfarim, I believe that this constant word that comes up in the news, that the world's in a state of anarchy, the world's in a state of chaos, the bad guys are taking over. I look out the window. I read enough stories in the newspaper. I listen to enough media, and I'm beginning to believe that the world's in a state of anarchy. And where is God? I don't see the hashgacha. I don't see God supervising anything. It looks like lahavdil, the principal left the room. And when the principal and the teacher left the room, everybody's shooting spitballs at each other. It's a hefgewelt. And if it's a hefgewelt, then there's nobody rewarding and punishing. When the teacher's not in the room, the person who shot the spitball is not getting punished. The person that got hit by the spitball nothing's being done to protect him. And then suddenly the teacher comes back into the room and the chairs are messed up, the desks are upside down, there's spitballs all over the floor, and the principal and the teacher say, this whole class is punished, everybody's losing recess for a week. The guilty are not punished separately from the victims are punished just like the perpetrators. Where is the schava oynish in a world like that? And of course, if I don't see schava oynish in my lifetime or hashgacha, when my eyes are open, what do you want me to believe in? How do I understand, not a belief, but how do I understand that there's something called Mashiach? Mashiach is a reward. And right now, I don't see reward. Right now, as things are going on, I don't see this reward punishment process. So where would I understand that there's an ultimate reward called Mashiach, an ultimate reward called Chias HaMesim? That was how the Sefer began. And the Ramchal gave us a tremendous amount of principles, the creation of the world, for Hatova, Shleimus, Yichud, all these concepts, Rebbeinu Shalom is not a Mukhrach, V'chulu. Now, we're on page Nun Gimel, and we're starting a topic called Chias HaMesim. What is this Chias HaMesim about? If you go back to paragraph 62, which is on the same page, 53, Amar HaSeichel, the Seichel said, we need to talk about three different topics. Man's existence, Al Maisav, the way man conducts his life, Val Pri Maisav, what are the ramifications of the way a man conducts his life? What does he accomplish? What does he not accomplish? What does it do for himself? What does it do for his community? What does it do for the world? What are the fruits of a person's conduct? So the Ramchal, who, as I mentioned last week, wrote a book called Sefer HaHigayon, the book of logic. He writes in a logical, as we're learning in Daas Tevunos, a very technical way. How do you understand this? How do you understand this? How do you understand this? Of course, if you're going to just say, I don't need to understand anything, a person can say, I'm not interested in understanding everything. I just have one piece of Gemara, one phrase in the Gemara, and the Gemara tells me, Kol ma'adov rachmana l'tav. Everything that God does is for the good. Gamarnu, I live with that. Of course, Kol ma'adov rachmana l'tav is a belief system. If you ask the person, Kol ma'adov rachmana l'tav, everything that God does is for the best, how do you understand that? So some people would say, I'm not going to explain it because I don't really care to understand it. I just accept it as a belief. That's what we said a couple of minutes ago. There are people that have that sheet. The sheet of Ramchal, Shaloch, Evisavovas, Ramam is, that's not a good enough answer. A person has a chiyuv of Yodata Hayot. You have to have a human understanding of these concepts. So we want to go into this idea of what are the man's actions. What occurs from these actions? So the questions are man's existence, what man does in his lifetime, what are the fruits of what man does in his lifetime? So because of the Ramchal's way he sets up logic, he's going to go to the last question. What was the last of the four questions that the Neshama asked the Sefer at the beginning of the Sefer? Question 1, where's the Hashgacha? Question 2, where's Schava Onesh? Question 3, I don't understand how to explain Bias Mashiach. Question number 4, I don't know how to explain Chias HaMesim. He's going to start with Chias HaMesim now. Why? Because when you understand the goal and the purpose of something, you can then understand how to prepare for that purpose. We gave the marshal, a person wants to build a house. He doesn't go to an electrician and a plumber and say, I want to build a house, come and build it. Can't do it. First, a person has to have the idea. Soif Maaseh b'machshava tchila. We say it in L'chadoidi, but Soif Maaseh b'machshava tchila. The last idea, the last concept, the tachlis, Soif Maaseh b'machshava tchila. The end result has to be b'machshava tchila, has to be in the thought process from the beginning. So first, you say, I want to build a 3-story house. I want to have 3 windows on this floor, 5 windows on this floor, 1 bathroom on the first floor, 2 bathrooms on the second floor. I want 6 bedrooms. I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. Now you have the plan. This is what it's going to look like. Now you work backwards and say, if that's going to be the plan, you go to a plumber, you say, here's the plan. What do we need to do to accomplish this plan, this plumbing, in this house? You go to an electrician, you say, what do we need to do in order to have electricity in this kind of house? So we start with the goal, soif maseh, v'machshava tchila, has to be in the original machshava. So if we understand what the ultimate goal is, which is we're going to live a life, shmiras Torah mitzvahs, going to Gan Eden, going to the process of the final din, and then going to Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is the final goal. And if that's where we're going, what do I need to get there? If the house I want to build is called Tchias HaMesim, what's the electricity and the plumbing I need to put in to get to that house called Tchias HaMesim? So he's now going to focus on Tchias HaMesim. It's an amazing discussion about why does a person have a guf, and why does he have a neshama, and how the two are put together, and what's the ultimate purpose of a guf, and what's the ultimate purpose of the neshama, and what's the ultimate purpose of the two of them together. It's going to be an amazing discussion. Okay, so on page 53, Nun Gimel, paragraph 66, Samach Vav. Amar HaSeichel, Kan Tzrichen Lavoil Inen Tchias HaMesim. Now we arrive at the point where we need to understand the purpose, the inyan of Tchias HaMesim, in which we believe without any doubt, without any suffix. And here I'm going to make a very important point. The Mishnah in Masechta Sanhedrin Daf Tzadik, the parak called Chelik. We know parak Chelik because we say it every week before Pirkei Avos. Kol Yisrael Yesh Lehem Chelik L'Olam Haba. Every Jew has a share in the world to come. The Mishnah begins, Kol Yisrael Yesh Lehem Chelek L'Olam Haba. Every Jew has a portion of the world to come. That's the first Mishnah and Daf Tzadik in the parak called Chelek, and it's called Chelek because the Mishnah says Kol Yisrael Yesh Lehem Chelek L'Olam Haba. The first Mishnah there says every Jew has a share in the world to come, except the following. One absolute necessity to make your way to Tchias HaMesim, L'Olam Haba, is to make sure that you believe in Tchias HaMesim. But believing in Tchias HaMesim is not enough. If someone, it has to be, if someone says Tchias HaMesim is not min HaTorah, those are the words, min HaTorah, he has no share. What does it mean? You have to believe that there's a share, that there's Tchias HaMesim min HaTorah. Rashi explains that if a person believes absolutely in quote unquote the resurrection of the dead, he believes in Tchias HaMesim, but he doesn't believe that it's written in a pasuk in the Torah. He absolutely believes it, but he doesn't believe it's written in the Torah. Not good enough. Ein lechelik. You have to believe that Tchias HaMesim is in the Torah itself. It's not some Agadata, it's not some prophecy. It comes from a pasuk in the Torah. And that's why the Mishnah says, Ha'oimeh, that Ein Tchias HaMesim, min HaTorah. Tchias HaMesim, I believe in it, but it's not in the Torah. Not good enough. Ein lechelik. Yet Hashem, as we go through this parak, we'll talk about why Tchias HaMesim is so important, that it has to be an emunah. It has to be a belief and an understanding that it comes from a pasuk in the Torah, and not just from some kind of belief in a prophecy or an agadot. That has to be a pasuk in the Torah. For example, the Gemara brings down numerous psukim that teach us that Tchias HaMesim is in the Torah. There's a pasuk that we're all familiar with, Pashas B'Shalach. Oz Yoshem Moshe v'nei Yisrael Hashiva Azayis Hashem. And then Moshe, so we translate it, sang in past tense. Oz then is also future tense. The Gemara says, Mikanu Tchias HaMesim in Torah. We learn out that Tchias HaMesim in Torah. It says that then Moshe will sing. So Moshe is going to get up with Klal Yisrael, Depends if Dar HaMidbar Yesh Lam Chelik B'Olam Haba. But Moshe is again going to sing. So you see there's Tchias HaMeisim Min HaTorah. Another pasuk, we say it twice a day in Kriya Shema. L'man yirbu yimechem v'yimei v'nechem al ha'adama. You see that there's Tchias HaMeisim Min HaTorah. It's still talking about our ancestors living in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, there are a lot of different psukim, but you have to believe Tchias HaMeisim is Min HaTorah. Tchias HaMeisim is so critical that it became the second bracha in Shmoneh Esrei. Baruch atah Hashem, Machai HaMeisim. Why is it so critical that there be a belief, and according to Ramchal Noah, an understanding in Tchias HaMeisim? Yetz Hashem, as we go through the parak, we'll talk about that. But this is critical. This is not just a belief or an understanding. This is one of the things, either you're going to get to Olam Haba, or Chas v'Shalom, if you don't get it straight, you're not going to get to Olam Haba. You have to understand, believe, Tchias HaMeisim is Min HaTorah. Let's take a look in my Friedlander's footnote 114. Tchias HaMeisim hu primaisav shel ha'adam. Tchias HaMeisim, the resurrection of the dead, is the ultimate fruit of a man's labor and toil in this world. It's not Gan Eden. We're going to learn about Gan Eden, and we're going to learn about Tchias HaMeisim, we're going to learn about Olam Haba. They're not the same thing. Okay, Gan Eden, Olam Haba, they're not the same thing. The ultimate fruit of man's labor and toil in this world, in Shmiras Torah Mitzvahs, is not Gan Eden. The ultimate fruit of his labor and toil in this world is Tchias HaMeisim, which comes later. Tchias HaMeisim hu primaisav shel ha'adam. Lachein aleinu levar rishayin. Therefore, we're going to explain this first, even though it's the last thing. A person lives. Let me understand his life. A person conducts his affairs. Let me understand how to conduct his affairs. A person has a guf and neshama. Let me understand a guf and neshama. A person dies and goes to Gan Eden. Let me understand Gan Eden. After a long process, a person goes through Tchias HaMeisim. So let's talk about Tchias HaMeisim at the end of the Sefer. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, no, the Ramchal says we're going to talk about that end process first. We're going to talk about the ultimate fruit and the reward of man's toil in this world is Tchias HaMeisim. That's all the way at the end. We're going to talk about it first. Why? Because once I understand the ultimate fruit of your labor, I'm going to be able to work retroactively and explain to you what your labor is about. This is the goal. And then when you understand the goal, we're going to talk about how you can get to that goal. We're going to build a house. This is what the house is going to look like. Then we're going to talk about the electricity and the plumbing to bring into the house. Back to the text. Samach Zayin 67, Amr HaNeshama. Neshama says, great. This is one of the four things at the beginning of our conversation I asked you about. I asked you about Hashgacha, Schava Oynesh, Bias Mashiach, and Tchias HaMeisim. Good. This is one of my four kashas. I really desire to get to the depths of the understanding of this subject. Footnote 115 in Rav Friedlander. We're going to do a lot of footnotes in Rav Friedlander here, and I did scan and we sent out new pages. The English version does not have Rav Friedlander's notes, and they're key. In the whole Sefer, they're key. But in this subject of Tchias HaMeisim, they're absolutely critical. Footnote 115, Kitzarech Lahavim. The Ramchal is going to explain to us something that we need to understand. Why do I need to have Tchias HaMeisim? Let's go back to a Rambam and a Ravid as an introduction. The Rambam seems to indicate, and I say seems, but seems to indicate, and that's the way the Ravid understood the Rambam, that the physical body that we know of, once it dies and decomposes, it's gone, it's finished. When we talk about Tchias HaMeisim, we're talking about a neshama on a higher level coming back to be Nene Miziv Hashchina. That's the Rambam Shita. There's no guf. And he has a raya for that from a Lashon Gemara in Brachos Yitzayin, that Olam Haba, there's Ein La Yeshiva, Ein La Achila, Ein La Shasiya, in Olam Haba, there's no food, there's no drink, etc. So the Rambam says no food, no drink, none of these kind of things that a physical body needs. Therefore, in Olam Haba, there is no physical body. Olam Haba is a world of neshamas. And that's how the Ravid understood the Rambam. When the Rambam says that in Hilchos Tshuva, the Ravid immediately comments in a footnote and says, I don't understand the Rambam. When we say the word Tchias Hamesim, what exactly does that mean according to the Rambam? A neshama never dies. After the body went into the kever, the neshama went to Gan Eden, or Chas v'Shalom somewhere else. But eventually neshama is going to get to Gan Eden. Neshama never died. The guf died. Now we say we're going to have the resurrection of dead. If the body's not coming back, then what is being resurrected? The body's not coming back, and the neshama never died. So the Ravid says, what is Tchias HaMesim according to the Rambam? So therefore the Ravid says that L'Asid Lovoi, there's going to be Tchias HaMesim on the body, and the body is going to come back. But the Rebbeinu Shalom is going to create a new type of body. He says, I don't understand what the Rambam's problem is, because the Gemara says in Olam Haba there's no food and drink, so there's no food and drink. The Rebbeinu Shalom can create a new body for Tchias HaMesim that doesn't eat food and drink, and he brings a marshal. He says, look, it says that Eliyahu went up to Shemayim, B'Sayra Shemayim. Eliyahu went up to Shemayim with his body. Eliyahu didn't die. If Eliyahu didn't die and he had his body, what's he doing? He's eating. They're making barbecues for him in Shemayim. He has takeout food in Shemayim. Eliyahu is not eating in Shemayim because Rebbeinu Shalom gave him a new kind of guf that can survive in Shemayim without food and water. So therefore, the Ravid says that Tchias HaMesim means that the bodies are coming back. And it'll be a kind of body of which we don't know right now. It'll be a kind of body that doesn't need food and drink. Okay. The Ramchal is adopting that sheet. And the reason he's adopting that shita is, we'll see in a moment, what Rabbi Friedland is saying is, Tzarech Lahavin, in footnote 115, Lama ein haneshama lavad yichol kavos chalos lavad. What do I need a body for Tchias HaMesim? The body was, Harei aguf hu l'chayur rak kli lavoda. L'chora, that's all the body is a vessel. A neshama can't eat. And since it's a mitzvah to eat matzah on Pesach, the neshama needs a mouth, it needs a tongue, it needs teeth. A neshama can't shake a lulav and esrog, it needs hands. Therefore, the neshama uses the hands to shake a lulav and esrog. All of our mitzvahs. The neshama doesn't talk, it needs a mouth in order to teach Torah and learn Torah. That's all these physical attributes are vessels so that the neshama can be shomer Torah mitzvahs. And how does neshama shomer Torah mitzvahs? Because it's constantly fighting the body. The body constantly wants to do X, which the Ramchal will talk about. The body wants to do a bunch of things that the neshama doesn't want to do. And the neshama wants to do a bunch of things that the body doesn't want to do. So once the neshama finally was victorious and it got you to eat matzah and put on your tefillin, be Shem Shabbos and put on tzitzis and put on your tefillin, etc., etc. And your neshama conquered your physical body, and now the physical body is gone, it's decomposed. The neshama let it go to Olam Haba. What does the neshama need the body back again for? It fought the body the whole life, and the most that the body was a vessel through which the neshama can be Shem Torah mitzvahs. Why does the body have to come back to Tchias HaMesim? That's where the Ramchal is headed as premise one. Why do I need a body at Tchias HaMesim? So that's what Friedlander explains in footnote 115. 66, Samaches, bottom of page on Gimel, Rav Friedlander's caption. This is Rav Friedlander writing a caption. B'Tchias HaMesim yisachdu shuv guf u'neshama. At Tchias HaMesim, the body and the neshama will once again come back together. Kidei shekabu yachad schorim, so that both the guf and the neshama can get rewarded in Olam Haba. Kivin she'amolu amlu yachdav Olam Hazeh, since both of them work together in Olam Hazeh. What does that mean? Samaches, bottom of page 53. 68. Amar HaSeichel, the Seichel says, First of all, I want to tell you, summarize a very simple rule about Tchias HaMesim. Ki kasher bara HaKadosh Baruch Hu es ha'adam guf u'neshama lav u'masa shneim ke'echad es kol avodas HaKodesh. When the Ribono Shel Olam, for reasons he's going to explain later, decided that the way man would be created would be in two different parts, a guf and neshama. There's nothing else that was created guf and neshama. The only thing created guf and neshama was a human being. A malach doesn't have a guf, and the other creatures and the other things that God created don't have a neshama. One of the malach is kulay ruchnius. The other creations are kulay gashmius. And man is a combination of the ruchnius and the gashmius. There is no other creation like man. So when man was created with these two things, in order la'avod l'masa, in order to work and carry the burden of serving Hashem, ha'torah v'amitzvah shenosam hem, to work hard to accomplish the Torah and the mitzvahs, hine roihu shegam b'kabolas hasra nitzri yachdaviyu. The only proper thing is that since whether the body fought off the neshama, whether the body didn't fall off the neshama, the fact of the matter is the lip and the mouth and the teeth that chewed matzah, you don't trash them. They were used for a holy purpose. The hand that had tefillin on it, the body that had tzitzis on it, the hands that lit Shabbos candles, the bodies that kept taharas hamishpacha, the eyes that learned Torah, the mouth that spoke Torah, the nose that smelled besamim, the ears that heard Torah, the brain that thought Torah, etc., etc. You don't throw them away. They were used for holy purposes. Whether they tried to fight it off or not doesn't make a difference. They became used for holy purposes. And therefore, it doesn't make sense that when the time for reward comes, that only the neshama should get a reward, and those parts that were used by the neshama should remain decomposed forever. Everybody that was used for davar kadosh gets reward. Ki lo yitachen, it's not possible, the Ramchal says, shi haguf omo v'loyloi, that the body should work and it should be used for shmiras haTorah mitzvahs, and it gets no reward. It's just an impossible idea. The Gemara says in numerous places, including Baba Kama Lamed Ches, that Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't withhold reward from anything that he created. Anything that does something that's worthwhile, the Baruch Shalom has to reward it. That's a rule in the Bria. And since the Guf, it did want, it didn't want, it fought, Lamaisa, Matzah went down the mouth, Lamaisa, Lulav and Esrog were in the hands. Lamaisa, the body was used for the most holy things in the world. There's no way you can trash such a thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't withhold the reward for anything a creature does. Aval Mashat Zorach lives Bainim, turning to page 54, but what we need to understand, once we get that idea set, that the guf also has to be rewarded in Olam Haba. So there's a body and a soul together back in Olam Haba. Now we have to understand 3 times, 3 different periods of the human existence. Well, we need to understand 3 points in time. Remember, this discussion started earlier. It started last week, and I repeated it earlier today, that there are 3 points in time. We're going to have 3 questions to answer. Man's existence, man's conduct during his lifetime, and what the fruit of that conduct is. We're now studying the fruit of that conduct, the ultimate fruit of that labor, which is Tchias HaMesim. And now once we got into Tchias HaMesim, we're going to have 3 questions in Tchias HaMesim. 1, Bishapim. The first part of man's existence is when the neshama is inside the guf. Man is born, there's neshama in the guf. When does neshama trigger? That's it. People get neshama confused with Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov. But the person is born with his neshama. So person's stage 1 of his existence is neshama in guf. Stage 2, Bihi Parda. After 120 years, the neshama goes to where it goes, Gan Eden, and the guf goes into the ground where it goes. The second stage of man's existence. The third stage of man's existence is when the neshama goes back into a resurrected body at Tchias HaMesim. 3 separate periods of time in the question of Tchias HaMesim. This is how God will do his work with every human being. This is not something coincidental. It's not just that's the way it is. You need to understand, why is man guf and neshama? He could have been just guf or just neshama, or he could have been one just guf neshama. Remember, guf is dust of the earth. Neshama comes from Shemayim, and lo yikached mimenu davar, as the Ramchal is going to say tomorrow. God could have created man in any number of ways. He's not a mukhrach, but he decided that man wouldn't be guf neshama. He wouldn't be one gush. He wouldn't be one particle of neshama and guf together. The Rebbeinu Shalom decided it's going to be two separate parts that make up man. And then the Rebbeinu Shalom, after the Chet, said you have to split up. The guf goes to the ground and the neshama goes to Shemayim. Then there's going to be a point where they both come back together. Or they have to both come back together again. These are the details that we will have to acquire. And a very broad and necessary understanding. So that's what we're up to for today. Hello, Kanina, how are you? That's what we're up to for today in the Daas Tevunos. We'll say something about Eretz Yisrael so that we don't simply go from Shivas to the Tammuz and talk about Eretz Yisrael, and then we stop talking about Eretz Yisrael. So the covered Eretz Yisrael, just to make a point, it's the Shmaka Parsha. From all the Parshas in the Torah, this is probably the Parsha that has in it more talk about the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, Parshas Ekev, than any other Parsha in the Torah. Parshas Ekev is constantly talking about the beauty of Eretz Yisrael. The Shivas Haminim, the 7 different minim that Eretz Yisrael are praised for, Eretz Chitus, Oyer Gefen, Te'ena Rima, Eretz Eishemen, U'Devash, this week's Parsha. Eretz HaShalom, Meskenus Teicha Ba'Lechem, Loisechsa Kol Ba, Loisechsa Kol Ba, nothing is missing in Eretz Yisrael. Then we have the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon in this week's Parsha, good mitzvah to learn and to connect with. We do it every day, whether it's Birchas Hamazon, Ala Mechia, Shaila Ala Mechia is Dairaisa, but the idea that we bless God after we eat is in this week's Parsha. It's a mitzvah Dairaisa, one of the 613 mitzvahs, but the mitzvah is said in the most interesting way. V'chalta v'savata. You will eat and you will be satiated. Uveirachtas Hashem alekecha, and you will bless God. That's it. That should be the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon, right? You eat, you're satiated, and bless God. That's the mitzvah of Birchas Hamazon. But I didn't finish reading the pasuk. V'achalta v'savata, you will eat, you will be satiated. Uveirachtas Hashem alekecha, and you will bless God. Al ha'oretz ha'toiva asher nosan lach. So al ha'oretz ha'toiva either means on the good land, which makes it sound like if you eat and you're satiated and you're in Eretz Yisrael, you bench. But if you eat and you're satiated but you're in Chutz La'aretz, you don't have to bench. You will make this blessing on the land. That is not a correct interpretation, although it has a remes to such an interpretation, because Birchas Hamazon is not like Shemitah and Pei and Demai. We talked about there are 2 types of mitzvahs. There's a Chayvus Haguf. It's a personal mitzvah that has nothing to do with the land. And then there's a Chayvus Karka. The Gemara in Kedushin breaks the mitzvahs into 2 parts. There's a Chayva and the Karka, things that have to do with the land. You need land, Shemitah. You have land, Shumas, Maisers. That's the only way that you can do these kind of mitzvahs is if you have land. Those mitzvahs are only in Eretz Yisrael. The other mitzvahs that are on the proof, tefillin, mezuzah, nothing to do with the land. Although, as we learned in the Ramban in Pashas Achrei Mois, and the Ramban talks about it in other places, the ikar place to be Makayim mitzvahs is in Eretz Yisrael, and the Chutz La'aretz with Makayim mitzvahs because Hatzivi Lach Tziyonim. The Rebbeinu Shalom is told, Yirmiyahu, listen, make sure that the Jews are showing Torah mitzvahs in Chutz La'aretz, because after the Golus, Nebuch, it's already 2,000 years. If the Jews in Chutz La'aretz will not be showing Torah mitzvahs, they come back to Eretz Yisrael. Mashiach has to give them a Torah. They don't know anything from Torah. You need another Torah, and the Maharal explains that there can't be another Kabbalah Torah. So it's like a Boy Scout rule to make sure that they don't forget the Torah. So let them keep the Torah and the mitzvot l'Aretz. And as I mentioned, we say this twice a day in Kriya Shema. Something is to How do I know it's in this? How do I know it's in the Torah? Because this week's parsha also. Parsha Sekev has the parsha of Shemaya. Rashi says that even after you go into Golus, make sure you keep your tefillin on, put the mezuzah on your door. Why do I need a warning that when I'm in Golus, I need to put on my tefillin and have a mezuzah on my door? Why would I think you don't have to have a mezuzah and tefillin chutz la'aretz? It has nothing to do with the ground. It has to do with me. If my body is in chutz la'aretz, I need tefillin and mezuzah. So Yirmiyah gave us a warning, and the Torah before that gave us a warning this week's parsha. Even if you're in Golus, make sure you have your tefillin mezuzah on. But the ikka place to keep the mitzvahs is in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so the pasuk says, eat, be satiated, and bless Hashem on the land or for the land. No matter where you're eating and where you're satiated, the bracha of Birkis Hamazon, v'chalta v'savot v'rachtas Hashem Elokecha al ha'oretz ha'toiva asher nasan lach. If you're eating and you're satiated, you have to bench afterwards. And in your benching, you have to thank God for Eretz Yisrael. And we do this in benching. The first bracha in Birchas Hamazon is Baruch Atah Hashem, Hazon es hakol. Rebbeinu Shalom, you fed and satiated everyone. That's the first bracha. What's the second bracha? Noida l'cha Hashem Elokeinu. Al shen chalta laviseinu, eretz chemda toiva urchava. Right? Second bracha in Birchas Hamazon. Noida l'cha Hashem Elokeinu. I want to thank you, God, al shen chalta laviseinu, that you gave our forefathers a Yerusha. Eretz chemda toiva urchava, and that's how we answer this pasuk. When you eat and you're satiated, no matter where you are, you thank Hashem for the Eretz Chemda Torah Chava, Sheretzisu in Chapel. So this becomes the second bracha in Birchas Hamazon. Why? Because people need to understand the Gemara in Tainus teaches us that all Shefa Panosa that comes to the world works its way through Eretz Yisrael first. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decrees Parnasa through Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael, it gets divided, whatever the Gemara means, it gets then divided up to the whole world. To the extent that people can eat and be satiated anywhere in the world, it's because of the Eretz Toiva Hashanah, because the Eretz Chemda Torah Chava. That's why there's Parnasa in the whole world. So when you eat, you're satiated, you're going to bless. You're going to thank God for the food you ate. You have to thank God for the food you ate and that you're satiated. Al ha'aretz ha'toiv, you have to remember Eretz Yisrael, that's where it all comes from. We mentioned already last week when we were talking about Eretz Yisrael during the 9 days, the amazing halacha in Arachayim. It's a halacha, it's not a gadata, it's not a chassidish word, it's not a musa word, it's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. In Chutz La'aretz, you can't duchen. Kahanim can't duchen, except Yontif by Musaf. Why? Because in Chutz La'aretz, everybody's always worried about their panasa. They're torrid in their machshavas of panasa, and when a person that's torrid, he's worried, he's not in a mental state to bless others. Because when he's worried about what he's going to have, it's hard for him to be mavorech that someone else should have. So the Lashon Ramah was, if you're not besimcha, then your brachas can't work. You have to be mamish b'simcha. You have to be happy to give out a bracha to somebody else. So in Chutz La'aretz, the Kohanim can't do it because they're always worried about their panasa. Klal Yisrael is worried about their panasa in Chutz La'aretz. Yontif, Musaf, because Musaf, you can't do it in Shachris on Yontif. Why? Because we're coming up to a very good meal. And the Kohanim are already getting into a good mood because they're going home to a good meal. So then they're b'simcha. They can duchen Musaf Yontif. Eretz Yisrael, Baruch Hashem, we duchen every day. So we read in the Seif Eretz Yisrael that the reason you can duchen every day in Eretz Yisrael is because you're always b'simcha for simply being in Eretz Yisrael. You have this, and you have this, and you have this, and you have this. Yeah. But overcoming all those things is looking up at the heavens and saying, I'm in Eretz Yisrael. What a simcha, what a zechus that I have to be in Eretz Yisrael. So, Eretz Yisrael, you're besimcha. Mela, everything else falls into place from that simcha. We mentioned the Zohar HaKadosh. The Zohar HaKadosh asked the steamer. In one place, David HaMelech says, Ivdu es Hashem b'yira, serve Hashem out of fear. In one place, the Zohar HaKadosh says, serve Hashem out of simcha, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha. And the Zohar HaKadosh in Parshas Bamidbar says, serve Hashem out of fear. When David HaMelech said that, he was talking to Jews in Chutz La'aretz. And Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, serve Hashem b'simcha. David HaMelech was talking about Jews that live in Eretz Yisrael, where there's simcha. So the simcha in Eretz Yisrael is the place where Parnasa comes down, and then it gets distributed to other parts of the world. So you may have a question, why doesn't God leave a little more here? It looks like it comes down in Eretz Yisrael, and then it goes all over the world. And all over the world, there's so much. And here, Chas Shalom says, there's so little here. If you have such a kasha, think about it a little better. So there's a simcha in Eretz Yisrael that we can duchen every day because we're besimcha. And one of the sources of simcha is we don't have to worry the whole day about panasa. So v'achalta v'savata, you eat, you're satiated, ubeirachtas Hashem alekech, and then you're going to bench after you eat. Doesn't make a difference where you are, Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz, you bench, ala oretz hatoiv asher nosam loch, for the land that God gave you, because that land is the source of all the bracha, all the food, all the panasa, all the satiating you do is a bracha that comes from Eretz Yisrael, no matter where you are. The Baruch Shalom said, refers to those Yidden, refers Yeshuas to those Yidden, Yeshuas, the Baruch Shalom said the Chamas to those Yidden, the Chamas. Baruch Shalom send barachas to all those Yidden, barachas, Yeshuas, the Chamas, refers can only come through Baruch Shalom when he wants, how he wants, who he wants. He's the Yachid, Echad, Miyuchad. He has different shluchim that he picks, and these things can only happen because he wants them to happen when he wants them to happen, and through the way he wants it to happen. And when we believe this and understand this, this becomes our own Gilui HaYichud. And through that Gilui HaYichud, we perfect ourselves and we help perfect the imperfectly perfect world. And with that, we help bring Mashiach Tzidkenu Her Yameinu. Everybody, please take care of yourself. Do the things you should do. Don't do the things you shouldn't do. Go where you have to go. Don't go where you don't have to go. Take care of your health based upon your conditions, based upon your age. The Rebbeinu Shalom loves Yidden who can get together every day and daven and learn and do mitzvahs. That's the Ikar Sheba Ikar right now, is to keep yourselves healthy and well, to continue learning davening. There are all kinds of decision makers out there that are making all kinds of decisions that are based upon all kinds of cheshbonos that are not Torah cheshbonos. Open the economy, don't open the economy, more money, less money, restaurants, beaches, hotels, this, that. There are different cheshbonos that have nothing to do with what we consider the most important cheshbon of pikuach nefesh, Jews being healthy. So everybody, the Baruch Shalom should give us all a tremendous bracha. I know I myself personally am confronted daily with all kinds of decisions. I'm invited to weddings, I'm invited to simchas, I'm invited here. I need to go here to get food, to get this, to get that. When should I go? What's the right time to go out? When will there be less people there? When will there be more people there? If there's more people there, should I drive away and forget about it? All these decisions that we constantly have to make. The Rebbeinu Shalom should give us the seichel to be able to make the right decisions, so we know where to go, when to go, how to go, and to be able to say, I'm sorry, I can't go when we're not able to go, when it's not the appropriate circumstances to go. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund. Let me take a quick look here at okay. I need to say this because I feel compelled to. There's a comment in the chat about oils and frankincense and cinnamon, and this has been somewhat of a success with Corona. And I don't want to make any comment. I'm not a doctor. Doctors have not in any way proven this whatsoever. The halacha that we have is, and Kach Mekubal, I have these psukim in writing, that for medical purposes, the only thing we do are those that are proven by science to have a direct nexus between a disease and a cure. If there's no proven nexus between a disease and a cure, there is shilas and halacha what you're doing. I don't want to get into that. I spent weeks at Eish Kodesh several years ago giving shiurim on alternative healing and all this kind of thing. I'm not going to get into that. Anybody that has questions, you can ask me. Anybody that wants to see the psukim, I'll send you the psukim. But I'm to the extent that people have segulas for refuahs. If someone says, you know, I have a segula that if you do this or you do this, you don't get corona, or the Rebbe says if you do this, you don't get corona, I make no comment about those things. Unless there's a scientific basis for these things, then they are thinking that these things are not within the realm of halacha. We have plenty of segulas. I mentioned one earlier today. Rav Osher Weiss talked about saying the Maisa HaKetayvus every day before davening, learning about Ketayvus. These are things that we have in the Torah. It's a pasuk in Pashas Korach that Ketayvus is Oitza Magefa. When we say Ketayvus Oitza Magefa, it doesn't mean you take your own Ketayvus and you can be Oitza Magefa. The Ketayvus was a special 11 types of incenses that were mixed together in a special mix. And in fact, it was a biblical prohibition for anybody to make that mixture for himself. It's a biblical prohibition. A private person cannot take the mixture that's used in the Beis HaMikdash and make it for private use. Okay, enough said about that. These things do with it what you want. They have no shaykhs to me whatsoever. The fact that they're posted or whatever is not something that has anything to do with me. From my vantage point, the psak is scientifically proven medicine that shows that when you do this, when you take this antibiotic, strep goes away. That's been proven. So that's an acceptable halacha. That's acceptable halacha. And I don't want to get into and I don't want the chat group to become a place where we're going to discuss the different types of cures that are running around the world about different kinds of diseases. That's not the purpose of the chat group. The chat group is there for one purpose. I don't even usually open it up. The chat group is there for one purpose. If I say something in shir and somebody has a question, it's appropriate to post a question. I try to get back to the people with the question. It's not a place to post prescriptions about what you think will cure something or won't cure something. It's not the appropriate place to put these things. It's not an appropriate place to put any of these things. And I'm saying it again. The chat group on the Zoom share is not a prescription laboratory for people to share their science or what they read about cures, about cancer, about anything else. It is only for questions on Masechta Midas, Masechta Tamid, and the Avoda. Other than that, it should not be posted on the chat group. If you want to post articles or other things, there are other chat groups that have no connection to the shir. Feel free to put in any chat you want, but please do not use this chat group or this forum to post any scientific knowledge you believe can cure anything. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.